stop before you lose them completely. Ask yourself this one question. What if the reason they are pulling away is not because they don't love you, but because of something you are unknowingly doing? There is a silent force shaping your relationship right now, and it is not them, it is you. Not your actions on the outside, but your inner assumptions, your hidden fears, your quiet doubts. This message will reveal how you may be pushing them away and how to reverse it before it feels permanent. You say you love them, and perhaps you do. But be honest with yourself for a moment. What is quietly living beneath that love? Is it peace or is it fear? Because love, when it is pure, does not tremble. It does not question its own existence. It does not sit in silence wondering, will they stay? And yet, if you listen closely to your own inner voice, you may hear it whispering doubts in the background of your affection. I hope they don't leave me. What if they find someone better? What if I'm not enough for them? You may never say these words aloud. You may smile. You may appear calm. You may even tell them you trust them. But what you feel, that is what speaks the loudest. Understand this clearly. No one is responding to your surface behavior. They are responding to the atmosphere of your being. The feeling you carry within you becomes the silent language that others read without effort. So when you love them but fear losing them at the same time, you are sending two opposing signals. And the stronger of the two, the one that is repeated, the one that is felt most deeply, is the one that takes form in your world. If fear is dominant, then no matter how beautifully you express love, what they feel from you is uncertainty. And uncertainty has a way of creating distance. You must see this not as something they are doing to you, but as something unfolding through you. For a moment, imagine yourself free from this fear. Not pretending, but truly free. Imagine what it would feel like to know, without effort, without doubt, that you are deeply loved, that you are chosen, that there is no one else they desire but you. Feel that not as a hope, but as a fact. In that state, would you worry about losing them? Would you question their actions? Would you search for signs? No, you would rest. You would feel secure. You would move through your days with a quiet confidence that needs no validation. And from that state, everything changes. Because now, what you are offering is no longer fear disguised as love, but love rooted in certainty. And certainty is something that draws people in, not pushes them away. You must begin to observe yourself, not on the outside, but within. Catch the moments where fear tries to disguise itself as care. Notice when your thoughts begin to drift into loss, into doubt, into imagining an ending that has not happened. And instead of following those thoughts, gently replace them, not with force, but with awareness. Tell yourself, I am secure, I am chosen, I am enough. And do not say it as empty words. Feel it as your reality. Because what you feel consistently becomes the foundation of your experience. They are not responding to what you say, they are responding to who you are being. And if you are being someone who fears loss, then loss begins to echo back to you. But if you become someone who knows they are loved, who rests in that knowing without question, then what returns to you must reflect that knowing. So do not try to change them. Do not try to control their actions. Instead, turn inward and change the only thing that has ever been creating your experience, your state. For the moment you shift from fear to certainty, from doubt to knowing, you are no longer loving them from a place of lack, but from a place of wholeness. And that is what they will begin to feel. And if you remain aware of this inner shift, you will begin to notice something even more subtle, something that has been speaking on your behalf long before your outer world reflects anything. Listen not to what you say out loud, but to what you repeat in silence. There is a conversation happening within you all day, often unnoticed, often unquestioned. It plays quietly beneath your actions, beneath your expressions, beneath even your intentions. And yet, this silent dialogue is the very script your world follows. You may find yourself thinking, they're ignoring me. And in that moment, you are not simply observing, you are defining. You may whisper within, they don't care like before. And without realizing it, you are assigning them a role, a version of themselves that must now appear. Or perhaps you feel they are drifting away. And that feeling, impressed again and again, begins to take shape, not because it is true, but because it is accepted. You must understand, these are not idle thoughts. They are not passing clouds with no consequence. They are instructions, quiet, consistent, emotionally charged instructions that are impressed upon the deeper part of you, the part that does not question, but creates. So when you repeat these ideas, even softly, even briefly, you are rehearsing a reality where distance exists. You are playing the scene over and over again until it feels natural, until it feels expected. And what feels natural, what feels expected, is what appears. This is why you may say you want closeness, you want connection, you want love, yet find yourself experiencing the opposite. Because beneath your desire, there is a stronger, more practiced story unfolding within you. And the world does not respond to what you occasionally wish. It responds to what you consistently assume. Now become aware of how often you return to these inner statements. Notice how easily the mind drifts into conclusions that have not been confirmed, into meanings that have not been chosen consciously. A delayed message becomes, they don't care. A change in tone becomes, something is wrong. A moment of silence becomes, they are pulling away. And each time you accept these interpretations, you give them life, but you are not here to react to appearances. You are here to define them. So instead of allowing the mind to wander into fear, bring it back gently, deliberately to what you choose to be true. If the thought arises, they are ignoring me, pause and replace it. They are thinking of me, they are drawn to me, they value me. Not as empty affirmations, but as a new inner conversation you are willing to sustain. Because the inner conversation, when repeated with feeling, becomes more real than any outer circumstance. You must begin to speak within yourself as though the relationship is already secure, already harmonious, already unfolding exactly as you desire. Hear their voice, not as distant, but as present. Feel their attention, not as lost, but as focused on you. Experience their love, not as fading, but as constant. And return to this inner dialogue again and again, not forcing it, but familiarizing yourself with it, until it becomes your natural way of thinking. For just as you once rehearsed separation without knowing, you can now rehearse connection with full awareness. And what you rehearse consistently must eventually take form. And as you begin to change this inner dialogue, you will come face to face with a habit that has quietly been directing your experience, the habit of reacting. Observe yourself in the moment when something does not go as you expect. When they delay in replying, what happens within you? There is an immediate movement, almost automatic. The mind begins to search, to question, to interpret. And before you even realize it, you have reacted. When they go silent, you do not remain still within yourself. You begin to overthink. You replay conversations. You analyze their tone. You try to find meaning in absence. And all of this feels natural, justified even. But what you call natural is simply practice. When they behave differently, even slightly, you feel a shift. And that shift turns into panic, not always visible on the outside, but deeply active within. And in that moment, you are no longer centered in your knowing. You have handed your state over to appearances. You must see this clearly. Reaction is not neutral. Reaction is agreement. The moment you react to something, you are silently saying, this is real. This has power over me. This defines what happens next. And so, without realizing it, you surrender your position as the one who determines the meaning, and you allow the outer world to dictate it for you. But the outer world was never meant to lead. It was meant to follow. When you react, you are moving from effect instead of remaining as cause. And as long as you stay in reaction, you will continue to chase changes rather than create them. So the question is not what they are doing. The question is what you are accepting. If they delay, must it mean distance? If they are silent, must it mean disinterest? If something shifts, must it mean loss? Or have you simply trained yourself to interpret it that way? You have the ability to choose differently, but it requires awareness in the moment where reaction usually takes over. Instead of reacting to what appears, pause. Not to suppress the feeling, but to redirect it. Return to what you know to be true, not based on evidence, but based on what you decide to assume. Because assumption is not guessing. It is selecting a reality and standing in it, regardless of what the senses suggest. So if the outer world shows you delay, you do not follow it into doubt. You remain where you have chosen to stand. You say within yourself, everything is unfolding in my favor. There is nothing to fear. And you allow that to be enough. If silence appears, you do not fill it with overthinking. You fill it with certainty. They are connected to me. Nothing has changed. And you rest there. This is not denial. This is direction. You are no longer asking the world to tell you what is happening. You are telling the world what it must become. And at first, it may feel unfamiliar because you are no longer reacting the way you used to. But that unfamiliarity is the very sign that you are stepping out of old patterns. Remember, reaction keeps you tied to what is. Assumption moves you into what should be. And what you consistently assume, with feeling, with acceptance, becomes more powerful than anything you observe. So do not give your attention to what is shifting on the outside. Give your attention to what you are choosing within. Because reality does not respond to your reactions. It reshapes itself around your assumptions. And as you begin to stand in your assumptions rather than your reactions, you may notice another pattern that has quietly been shaping your experience, the need for validation. Watch how often your attention moves outward, waiting, checking, hoping. You wait for their message to feel at ease. You wait for their call to feel secure. You wait for their words to confirm that everything is still intact. And until that moment arrives, something within you remains unsettled, as though your state depends on their action. But look closely at what is happening here. The moment you feel that you need their reassurance, you have already stepped into a state of lack. Not because something is missing in reality, but because you have accepted the idea that it might be. And from that state, everything you do begins to carry a different quality. Even your patience becomes strained. Even your silence becomes heavy. Because beneath it, there is a quiet demand. Show me that I am loved. Yet love does not respond to demand. It responds to presence. When you seek validation, you are placing them in the position of the source, as though they must give you something you do not already possess. And in doing so, you move away from your own center. But nothing outside of you was ever meant to complete you. It can only reflect you. So if you are waiting for them to prove something, it means you have not yet claimed it within yourself. Ask yourself honestly, if you truly knew without question that you are deeply loved, that you are chosen, that you are valued, would you still wait in the same way? Would you still check your phone with that same urgency? Would you still feel the need to interpret every delay? No, you would rest in that knowing. You would move through your day with a quiet confidence that does not rise and fall based on their actions, because your state would already be fulfilled. This is the shift from seeking love to being it. To be loved is not to chase it, not to ask for it, not to look for signs of it. It is to feel within yourself the completeness of it. To carry the feeling that you are already loved, already appreciated, already secure. And from that state, your actions change naturally. You no longer reach out from a place of need, but from a place of expression. You no longer wait with tension, but with calm expectation. You no longer question your worth because you are rooted in it. And this is what they begin to feel. Not your words, not your efforts, but your state. Because just as fear creates distance and reaction sustains uncertainty, lack creates pressure. And pressure even when unspoken, is felt. But when you are full within yourself, when you are no longer seeking to be filled, there is a lightness, a freedom in your presence that draws others in effortlessly. So instead of asking, why haven't they reached out? Turn inward and ask, what am I assuming about myself right now? Are you someone waiting to be chosen, or someone who already is? Are you someone hoping to be loved, or someone who knows they are? Because the moment you shift into that knowing, the need for validation begins to dissolve. And in its place, there is a quiet certainty that requires no proof. And from that certainty, everything begins to reorganize itself around you. And as you begin to release the need for validation, you may notice how often your mind drifts backward, returning to what has already been. You remember how they used to speak to you, how easily they showed affection, how natural everything once felt. And then just as quickly, the memory shifts to what changed, to what felt different, to what seemed to fade. You replay their words, you revisit their actions, you compare who they were to who they appear to be now. And without realizing it, you begin to form a quiet conclusion. They are not the same, but understand what you are doing in that moment. You are not simply remembering, you are re-identifying them. Every time you return to the old story, every time you repeat it within yourself, you are giving it life again. You are selecting a version of them and holding it in place through your attention. It may feel like you are observing reality, but in truth, you are reinforcing it. Because the mind does not distinguish between what is happening now and what is being vividly remembered. What you dwell upon, what you emotionally return to, becomes your present experience. So if you continue to think, they used to care more. If you continue to feel, something has changed. If you continue to assume they are not like before, then that is the version of them you keep alive. And they, in turn, reflect it, not because they are fixed, not because they have chosen to be distant, but because you have accepted that image as true. You must begin to see them differently, not based on memory, but based on your decision. Ask yourself, who are they now in your awareness? Not who they were yesterday, not what they showed you last week, but who are they in the version of reality you are choosing to occupy? If you continue to define them by past behavior, you remain tied to it. If you continue to expect the same patterns, you will continue to experience them. But if you are willing to release the old image, truly release it, then something begins to shift. You stop saying they changed. And you begin to say, they are exactly as I now choose to see them. You no longer hold them to a memory. You allow them to become something new. See them as attentive again. See them as present again. See them as expressing love freely and naturally. Not as a wish, but as a quiet recognition of what is already true in your chosen state. Because just as your inner conversations shape their responses, just as your assumptions guide their behavior, your image of them defines how they appear. They are not separate from your perception. They are not independent of your belief. They move as you see them. And if you continue to carry the past into the present, you give it permission to repeat. So let go, not by force, but by redirection. Each time the old memory arises, do not fight it. Simply replace it. Return to the version of them you prefer. Return to the feeling of how it is when they are exactly as you desire them to be. And stay there long enough, consistently enough, until it begins to feel natural. Because what feels natural becomes real. And what you persist in seeing becomes what you experience. And as you begin to release the past version of them, you may notice another subtle tendency within you, the urge to make something happen. You begin to try harder. You think more about them, more about the situation, more about what you should do next. Your mind becomes active, constantly searching for the right move, the right message, the right timing. You analyze every detail. What they said, how they said it, what it might mean, what it could lead to. And all of this feels like effort in the direction of love, but look deeper. This is not creation. This is strain. Because the moment you feel that you must do more to secure something, you are quietly accepting that it is not yet yours. And from the assumption, all action becomes infused with pressure. You may not see it in your behavior, but it is felt in your state. The more you chase clarity, the more unclear everything feels. The more you try to control the outcome, the more distant it seems. Why? Because effort, when it comes from lack, is resistance. It is the constant inner declaration that something is missing, something is not yet complete, something must still be achieved. And this state, though invisible, communicates itself. They may not understand it consciously, but they feel it. They feel the weight of expectation. They feel the tension behind your presence. They feel the unspoken need for things to move a certain way. And pressure, no matter how subtle, creates space. Not because they intend to pull away, but because the energy itself becomes heavy. So you must ask yourself, what are you truly doing when you try so hard? Are you expressing certainty, or are you compensating for doubt? Because when something is truly yours, you do not force it. You do not chase it. You do not analyze it endlessly. You rest in it. Think of something you already possess, something you never question. You do not wake up wondering if it will disappear. You do not spend your day trying to secure it again. There is a natural ease, a quiet knowing. This is the state you must enter, not by effort, but by acceptance. Instead of trying to make it happen, allow yourself to feel that it already has. Feel what it would be like if they had already chosen you fully, completely, without hesitation. Would you still be analyzing their messages? Would you still be questioning their action? Would you still be trying to figure everything out? No, you would feel calm. You would feel settled. You would move through your day with a sense of completion, not anticipation. And this feeling, this inner completion, is what brings it into form. So withdraw your energy from the constant effort. Step away from the need to control every detail. Return to stillness. Return to the feeling that it is already done. Not as a technique, but as a truth you are willing to accept. Let that feeling become familiar. Let it replace the urgency, the overthinking, the need to push. Because when you feel it finished, there is nothing left to force. And in that absence of pressure, everything begins to move naturally. And in that stillness, something becomes clear. Something that has always been true, yet often forgotten in moments of doubt. You begin to see that nothing has ever been happening to you. It has all been happening through you. Every fear you entertained, every inner conversation you repeated, every reaction you allowed, every version of them you held on to, every moment you sought validation, every time you tried to force an outcome. It was never separate from you. It was all moving from within. And the moment you truly grasp this, not just as an idea, but as a realization, everything begins to shift. Because now, you are no longer looking outward for answers. You are no longer asking, why are they doing this? You are no longer questioning their behavior as though it has a power of its own. You begin to understand they are not the source. They have never been the cause of what you feel. They have never been the origin of your experience. They are responding, reflecting, echoing back what has already been accepted within you. So when you felt fear, they reflected distance. When you entertained doubt, they appeared uncertain. When you held on to the past, they repeated it. When you sought validation, they withheld it. When you forced, they resisted. Not because they chose to oppose you, but because they moved in harmony with the state you occupied. And this is not something to blame yourself for. It is something to become aware of. Because the moment you see that it all begins within you, you also realize that it can all change within you. You do not need to wait for them to shift first. You do not need to convince them or persuade them or fix anything on the outside. You simply return to yourself. And within yourself, you begin to move differently. Where there was fear, you allow certainty to take its place. Not forced, not rushed, but gently, consistently. You begin to feel what it is like to be secure, even before you see proof. Where there was lack, You begin to feel fulfillment. Not because something has changed outside, but because you have decided it is already complete within you. You carry yourself differently. You think differently. You respond differently, not out of effort, but out of a new state that feels more natural each time you return to it. And as this becomes your dominant way of being, something inevitable begins to happen. They begin to meet you there. Not through force, not through persuasion, but through reflection. Because they cannot continue to show you something that no longer exists within you. If you are no longer the one who fears loss, they cannot mirror distance. If you are no longer the one who doubts, they cannot reflect uncertainty. If you are no longer the one who feels incomplete, they cannot appear absent. They must, in ways that may seem subtle at first, begin to align with the version of you that you have become. And this is how everything changes, not by altering them, but by returning to the source that has always been shaping it all. You. So don't try to fix them. Don't chase. Don't force. Just return to the version of you who is already loved, already chosen, already secure. Because the truth is, you were never losing them. You were only forgetting who you are. And the moment you remember, everything changes.